So maybe while we're waiting for people to get on, we could just, those who aren't on can say hello, and if they got their children names, ages, might be a nice thing. So Dave, since you know the parents, I'll have you facilitate, and hopefully people know how to mute. So
excellent. Well, yes, we have, and I don't know if you're in the same order here, but well, we have Alexandra, her son in our religious school, which is great. And so Jude will be back there tomorrow afternoon. We have Michelle, who's got Max in our infant toddler room, and he's just having way too much fun. We've got Mandy, who's got a current Julia and a graduated Brianna. We have Jeannie, who's got our current Leah and our graduated Nari. We've got Emery, who's got our current Leo and our graduated Max. We've got Susie, who's got both Olivia and Madeline currently. I'm not sure if we have Walter or Beth there. Let's see.
Walter, hello.
Oh, hey, Walter, how are you?
Hi, Walter.
And so we've got Evelyn and Theo. So, yeah, this is a challenging test for me each day. And then I think we've got Rachel Altschuler, who's got Izzy here.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
I thought I recognized your icon.
You passed the test with flying colors, Dave. That was excellent.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Good morning, Boker Tov, everyone. Thank you for making your time to be with us. Very grateful to Dale. Dale came out, I think it's 2 years ago, Dale, right? That the book came out, Kindness Advantage. And I hope that everyone in the nursery school community was able to get a copy, because I really wanted to put it in your hands. Titling was perfect. Very plagiarizing abilities for sermons in the book. So very grateful to Dale for that. And I've been kind of wanting to have the opportunity to co-teach with Dale, but also to learn from her more. So I really enjoyed this process, Dale. So thank you for that. And what we're going to do is take a look a little bit at traditional sources. Kind of give you a little bit of what's within our religious tradition, and then Dale's going to be able, from a scientific perspective, kind of give what I'd also say is the drash, the kind of the explanation of how all of this is fits together within our world. We selected to open a pretty well-known Talmudic quote, which was from Hillel. And Hillel was a sage about 2,200 years ago. And the quote that might be familiar is, he asks the question, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, what am I? And this teaching is right near another teaching within the Mishnah, which is the emphasis on the golden rule, which is in all great religious traditions. And it's, again, a story that people might be familiar with. There's two contemporary sages, both very famous, Hillel, and the other one is Shammai. And when you have disagreements in Jewish law between Hillel and Shammai, the law always follows Hillel. And the reason for it that the rabbis give is that Hillel was always kind and Shammai wasn't. And they tell a story of a young man who kind of wants to show that, Judaism is silly, and they don't, religious leaders really aren't ethical, they aren't kind. So late in the night, like 2:30 in the morning, he goes to this sage Shammai, and he slams on the door, knocking on the door, and Shammai's woken up. He comes to the door. You can see he's angry, he's grouchy. And this young man, according to the Mishnah, he stands on one leg, and he says to the sage Shammai, teach me Torah while I stand on one leg. And Shammai loses it. He starts screaming, he starts yelling, he throws the guy off his porch. And the young guy says, see, I knew it, all this supposable religion, it doesn't mean anything. Then he goes to the next stage. Now it's even later. It's 3:15 in the morning. He slams on the door. Hillel is woken from his sleep and he comes down. He opens the door with a big smile on his face. And he says, "How can I help you?" And the young guy's sort of startled, but he decides, "I'm going to do the same thing." He stands on one leg and he says, "Teach me Torah while I stand on one leg." And Hillel, continuing to smile, says, "Okay." And the guy now standing on one leg, you can imagine he's getting a little bit nervous because Torah is a lot of material. But Hillel then says to him, "Love your neighbor as yourself. Everything else is commentary. Come tomorrow and study with me." And the story ends, but then the postscript that's in the Mishnah is this young man ultimately does come to study with Hillel, and he himself ends up becoming a great sage. And that's the story that our people teach to emphasize for us that we really ultimately everything comes down to loving our neighbor as ourselves. There's another dispute between Rabbi Joshua and Rabbi Akiva as to what the most important verse in Torah is, and Joshua argues, the same thing, love your neighbor as yourself, and Akiva says it's true, it's extremely important, but that verse doesn't hold up without the verse before it in Genesis, which is that every human being is created equally in the image of God. And if you truly believe that Tselem Elohim, that every human being is created equal in the image of God, then you would be able to observe the golden rule as taught in all great religious traditions, to love your neighbor as yourself. And the corresponding, I throw a lot of stories because that's what rabbis do, but the corresponding drash is that there's a whole ritual dispute as to what time should you say your morning prayers. And one group says you can start as early as midnight. One group says you start at sunrise, and some says when the sun's complete in the sky. All these students make all these arguments, and the rabbi keeps saying, no, 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 no. Every possible time is offered, and the students kind of throw up their hands and they're like, what's possibly the answer? And the answer of the rabbi is that there's enough light in your world to look into a stranger's face and see a brother or a sister, right? So the ritual question prompts the ethical answer. And all of this, again, is at the core. Our tradition teaches that someone who's lost the ability to feel for others, in essence, they've lost the essential component of their own humanity. Again, being created at Tselem Elohim in the image of God. So the rabbis teach our capacity for compassion, our willingness to recognize and respond with empathy to the suffering of those beyond our immediate line of sight. This is the essence, the foundation of morality. And to be a religious person is to be called to affirm the fundamental truth that we're all children of a single God, and that as a result, we have to be brothers and sisters to each other. You can be a good human being without being a good Jew. You cannot be a good Jew without being a good human being. And I think that's the starting point, when you say, Menschlichkeit, right? To be a full human being, a full ethical human being, that's at the core, at the foundation of what it is to be a Jew, to be a human being. And one of the things that, I love about our nursery school is that, when we're bringing the kids in, of course, we want them to have all the right markers hit when they're of age. But what we're really trying to do is give them the life skill to be a mensch, to be this full human being, because that's ultimately fulfilling our mission as human beings, as Jews, but also, and this is where I'm going to turn over to Dale, it's for their own good, right? Because when we help our children be kind and have empathy and have this loving posture, it's what's going to make them healthy and happy. That's the Jewish bias. And with the good part of it, it's all grounded in science, and neuroscience gets validated a couple thousand years later, but it's very much a tradition. So again, thank you for joining this morning. And Dale, I'm going to turn it over to you for a while.
Rabbi, I can listen to you all day. I'm so happy that you started with those wonderfully positive, rooted in our heritage examples, because it really is who we are as a people. And I want to begin by saying, and again, how grateful I am by your act of kindness of asking me to join and teach with you. What an honor that is. And also that you gave everybody my book, which I really appreciate. And I also have thanks from my co-author, Amanda, who was really so impressed by your generous acts and of the many generous acts you do. You know, when we think about the golden rule, and you say that it's in all major religions, indeed it is. And we also have to think of what Hillel said. So we want to treat our neighbor as we want to be treated. And we also want to know that we have to be for ourselves. We have to really take care of ourselves. But if we only take care of ourselves, that's not enough. So we have this duality. And the duality is we have to have self-compassion and we have to have compassion for others. As parents, particularly parents of very young children, it can be very, very challenging. Taking care of oneself, especially during COVID and during this time, we really have to take moments to really investigate what we need at this time. And short of going on a vacation, which is really available right now, how do we take care of ourselves in meaningful ways so that we are really going to be calmer, happier, more focused, and more able to be available to others? If indeed we are in service to others, which I believe we are, and we are here to connect with others, and as Rabbi said, when we lose our compassion, we lose a piece of our humanity. We are social beings. We are here to connect and to serve others. But we cannot forget what it means to serve ourselves, because then it's like going to a dry well. There's nothing there. So we have to keep refilling our own well, and then we have what to give to others. But what do we want to give to others and why? We want to give them the best of ourselves, but we are not going to be an ideal parent all the time. We're not going to be an ideal mate all the time. We're not going to be the ideal anything all the time. So what we need to do is keep that ideal as a goal and allow ourselves to be human, allow ourselves to make mistakes, allow ourselves to kind of lose it from time to time. But when we do, the kindest thing we can do is to take ownership of it and to say, boy, I'm really sorry. I really bit your head off. And I wish I could roll back and try it again. And if I could, this is how I would have wanted to handle it. It's the kindest thing we can say to our children. When they see that we are human, that everybody makes mistakes, that everybody gets too close to the edge. And then we can say, you know, I shouldn't have answered you then. I should have just taken a breath. Because then we're modeling for our kids what taking care of ourselves is. Or I don't have it in my head to think about that right now. So let's talk about it in a few minutes. Or just wait, let me breathe with me. Let's do that kind of breathing where we ha and hold our bellies. Teach your kids how to do very gentle meditative breathing so they know they can calm themselves. But we have to be the role model of self-compassion, compassion, and empathy. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. I love when Rabbi said, see the light in another space. That will illuminate. There's something called the helper's hive. Some of you may know about it, and we speak about it a lot in the book. What happens when you offer help to someone else or something else? Let's say you save a dog that's in danger of being hit by a car or something. You get a flood of endorphins that really change your brain chemistry, and it makes you feel good. And there's scientific proof. You know, a lot of you talk about, we hear about when you really focus and you get in the zone, our brain chemistry changes. So when you help someone, you get a flood of endorphins. And these are the feel-good hormones. This is what also helps fight pain. And that also makes it like a contagion that you want to do, that someone else wants to do some nice act too. So if you do something for someone else, people use the phrase pay it forward. They want to do something nice for someone. You also want to do another nice act because it made you feel good. I'm not suggesting that we do kind acts just so that makes us feel good. But there's an enormous amount of research that shows that the giver gets more than the receiver. That the giver really feels good about the giving, The receiver feels good. The receiver and the giver want to give more. And here's the point that I'll end on before we go back to Rabbi, is even if you watch someone or hear a story, an inspirational story about someone doing something kind, or you see someone helping a child in a way, you see another child helping a child in a way that's so sweet, you have something that's called a moral elation. You also have a release of endorphins, and it's a combination of chemicals. We can go through it if you want. But what happens is your brain changes and you are feeling more calm, you are feeling more positive, you are feeling more optimistic. And this happens to children and they become happier, they become more focused, they do better in school, they become over time. They also want to be leaders, they become more civically engaged. When we teach these kinds of things to children and nurture what's already inside them, because we're all born with this capacity to connect with others. There are wonderful studies being done at the Yale Baby Lab, which really look at 3-4-month-old children who look and wonder, oh, I hear somebody crying, or who prefer a kinder person, a giver, than someone who, a helper as opposed to a hinderer. So we know that we're wired for this. We just have to nurture it, because if we don't, like a muscle, it will atrophy. So we just have to keep modeling and looking for opportunities to look through a lens of kindness. So on that moment, I'll pass it back to Rabbi.
Okay. So I was doing a bris yesterday morning, and there's a tradition when you do a bris for the boy, which involves entering the son of Israel into the covenant and asking, because of this act, that there should be good health and happiness for the son. We do that with our daughters without a medical procedure. It's called Simchat Bat, the joy of our daughter. But the custom is to do this as early as when the sun rises, as logistically allowed, because you're so eager to do it. And I was at the home yesterday, arriving while it was still dark, and I was in the home, and the sun was beginning to rise and the light was coming in, and the baby's older brother, who was just in his twos, but talking in his essence, and he was very curious, and you could see he kept trying to go to his brother, and his grandmother was kept holding him back. And I said, it's okay, we're going to start the ceremony with the big brother going to kiss the baby. And there was just this like huge smile that came with the big brother, if you will, to go over to sort of bless his little brother. And and just observing this, it was such a powerful reminder as the light sort of coming up, of the line, also very familiar to us. It's a Israeli folk song. It's from the Psalms. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Behold, what is good, brothers and sisters together. And that's within our family, and that's within our world. I'm looking at Emery's got the picture of the kids, right, sitting at the table playing with each other. For those of us who have, more than one child, what gives us the greatest nachas is, when the siblings are together with each other, when they're playing with each other. But that's, the mishpacha, the family, is not those just under one roof, but those who are attached to the larger circle. And I think one of the challenges it's really been for us this past, the year of this pandemic, is how do we do social distancing without being distanced from one another? And that's been, I think something we're all sort of struggling with. When I was sort of collecting materials with Dale, that we were kind of sorting through everything, and then had to deal with the challenge of eliminating 95% of what we prepared. But one of the things that we held on was an American poet, Edwin Markham, who really speaks about kindness and love being the ultimate goal. And Markham writes, he drew a circle that shut me out, heretic rebel, the thing to flout, but love, and I had the wit to win, we drew a circle and took him in. And to me, that's the concrete action that we try to figure out. There is sometimes, in first glance, there's a tendency to, I got to build a wall, I got to build a fence, I've got to keep out. And the challenge is to let in. And when we do let in, we're both better because of it. And again, how we do that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dale, is, we need our kids to distinguish differences. We need our kids to be able to honestly evaluate circumstances, to know things, but not to have the barriers in place for when we need to let that come down. And that skill, that balancing act, becomes the challenge for our children. And I think, again, and this will be within the science of it, it starts with how we're doing the role modeling of it. In our tradition, part of the way we do role modeling of bringing into the home, we have this wonderful invention called Shabbat. So when I was growing up, my mother of blessed memory, every Friday night, I remember saying to my mom when I was young, how come we don't have Christmas? And I grew up in Palo Alto, and there really was not, many Jews in Palo Alto. And I was like, how come we don't have Christmas? And my mom says, what are you talking about? And I'm like, what do you mean? She said, we have Christmas every Friday night. Every Friday night, don't you bring in your friends who were celebrating or having things? And I remember as a little kid, I was thinking, I was like, yeah, I guess that's kind of our Christmas, but it's kind of cool because it's weekly, right? And that we have that. So the bringing in the inclusivity, the sharing of food, sharing of time, that ritual prompts the ethical behavior that we want to have. So Gail, I'll turn it back over.
I love that story. I also want to mention that the role modeling is so important. Also really focusing, and I'm so grateful that you shared the story about the bris, because here's this little boy who really wants to connect with his brother. He may or may not understand what's ahead, but he knows that he wants to be there, and you saw that. So you were observing. When Amanda and I wrote the book, we wrote about the 10 fundamentals of kindness. We started off with 26 because we wanted one for every letter. And then we whittled it down, as you and I did yesterday, Rabbi, about using the tractates. And we really focused on 10 fundamentals of kindness. And we came to these because when we were starting to write the book, we wanted to say, what is it about this world where we're seeing so much more anger, so much more disrespect, so much more bullying. And we really couldn't put our finger on it. And so we said, well, what makes people charitable? And our book started off being about raising charitable children. And then we saw what were the qualities that so many charitable people had, and we called them the fundamentals. So this is what they are. And Rabbi, in your examples so far, you really have shown us some of them. And they're not in any specific order, but they are acceptance. So when you talk about, the circle being a circle, and then how do you invite people in? Well, we have to know about people and accept who they are and what they are, and really try to understand them. And I would ask you to think about this in relation to your children. Those of you who have more than one child, how do you accept who they are and who they present themselves to be and who they're becoming? Or are we constantly trying to change them, and how they are is not good? What is the message we're giving from our heart? And then a commitment. People who are kind seem to have a commitment to being kind and following through. And at this moment, what would be the kind thing to do for myself, or for my child, or for my family, for my in-law? What would be the kind thing to do? I'm committed to do something to help them. What's the connection? I spoke a little about this before. True kindness comes with a connection. Yes, we all want to make a donation. We all want to bring food for the needy. We want to do those things. But when we look in someone's eyes, as Rabbi said, and we have that connection to that other person, and we really feel what they're experiencing, even if you're at the edge, but if you can feel how frustrated your child is, at the moment of, take your breath and say, I know this is hard for you. I know you don't want to leave yet. It's really hard to say goodbye to your kid. And just acknowledging through that connection and empathy can help that person really move along. And because they're heard, they're understood. And we all want to be heard and we all want to be understood. We also had, after empathy, we had giving. People who are kind want to give, and they do give. They give of themselves, and they give of things. They give their time, even when they don't seem to have time. But they take care of themselves and they try to do something that's within their realm. They don't try to get burned out. And some of us are very much burned out, but we try to be kind and we give. We are interested. So when you think about going out of your own comfort zone and, wow, I never met a person like that, or my kids bring home this friend that I don't know anything about their family or their culture or anything, be interested. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to know anything. All you have to know is that there's another human being there. And that human being, perhaps you can learn from. And you can maybe share something, share your Shabbat with someone whose culture is very different. And nurture. People who are kind tend to nurture. They nurture themselves, they nurture others. And as I said before, we want to nurture kindness in our kids. And we observe. We watch. Rabbi, you watch that little boy. And his grandma was more interested in not having him make a fuss, or even be too involved with what was going on with the peers. But you were observing that he wanted to participate and you allowed him to. So we noticed. And then we question. We question our own values. We question our own beliefs. We question, wow, I thought this, but now I'm learning that. And you have to be open. In order to open that circle, you have to be open and you observe and say, well, that's something that I didn't know, or that proves what I thought. Do you want to question that? And then what I feel is one of the most important for kindness, particularly when we're parenting our children, we have to be ourselves and we have to allow our children to be themselves. So who are they? Be yourself. Nurture the talent and the goodness in your kid. If your kid loves to draw, then have that kid maybe get well card for someone. You talked about, Rabbi, you talked about socially distancing. I call it physically distancing and trying to stay socially connected, even through Zoom. That we connect with our ancestors, that we listen to stories, that we tell stories and listen to stories about where our kids came from, about their aunts, their uncles, and not only the good stories. One of the things that I've learned during this period is how important it is for people to understand where they came from and how people struggled, how they got through difficult times, what did they do, particularly during COVID, because that kind of emboldens us and it gives us more resilience. And helping children love to learn stories about their families and where they came from. And with role models, and it doesn't have to be a perfect person. You know, this person had a gambling habit. You know what he did? He did this and he worked so hard to help your aunt go to college. I mean, that all of us has many parts, that each of us is a mosaic and nobody's perfect. But where is the kindness in each of us? And how do we tell our children about those qualities and how they manifested themselves? So I just wanted to remind you of the 10 fundamentals, and we don't have to have all of them. But we, again, just as none of us is our ideal parent, we can kind of think of what does it mean to be kind? These are fundamentals. We deal with people respectfully. We try to have patience. And then we really try to get to know the person. We don't compare them to others. We just say who they are. And then what do they bring out in us? I think that one of the greatest lessons I learned as a parent and grandparent is how much I have yet to learn from my children, my children-in-law, how they parent our grandchildren, and what I learned from the kids. And I think one of the biggest challenges about being a parent of very young children, because we want to teach them so many things, is to listen to them and to watch them and to have them teach us who they are so that we can present what we feel our values are in our family and model them in ways that the children will really learn and will resonate with the kids. So that if you're volunteering in some way, that you talk about it with your kid. Say, well, what do you think you'd like to volunteer in? No, that's not of interest to me. Well, you love dogs. Maybe you'd like to walk some dogs. Or maybe you'd like to make maybe we can make a quilt and send it to the shelter, or whatever it is. Find where your kid has a talent and a passion, and then nurture that with your child. So I'll stop at that moment and turn it back over to Rabbi.
Do we want to take any questions or comments yet, Dale, or do you want to try to?
Sure.
I don't know if anyone,
Thank you for remembering that, Rabbi.
we have a ton of material, but did anyone have any questions or comments they wanted to have at this point, or?
So far.
Yeah. So, Dave?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in because it just so resonates with what we try to do in the classroom. We talk about tell children what you want them to do. Don't say don't run in the classroom.
Right.
Say walk in the classroom, because that's what they hear and remember. And as you're saying these things, I just think of, as parents and as educators and clergy and such, we have to constantly be showing the kind things that we're doing, and even pointing it out, not in a pat yourself on the back way, but you know what, somebody was having a hard day today, so I helped them in this way. And those are the kind of things that really stick in your, in children's minds. And I know from the parents that are on the call and those who haven't made it, this is on their minds, because we had in the classrooms, they put up mitzvahs that the children do each day, and it's just so on their minds that, oh, I want to do something kind for my friends. So
Yes.
this just all resonates very well.
Thank you, Dave, for that. And I really do want to say that pat on your back is an important thing to do, because you recognize that you did notice in your busy day with all the things that are going on, but you noticed that someone had packages and you were just going to hold the door, and then you made the eye contact. So it's all with that connection. I gave that example and I said, should we ever go out into the stores again, right? But now we're really looking at eyes because we can't see the rest of the face. But I think that, again, sharing that story, I know I was supposed to pick you up and I was 5 minutes late because there was something that was going on, and I wanted to see that if I could help, and thank you for your patience. And that's why I wasn't here on time. So you do give the whole story, because sometimes it's really important to stop and to help someone. And sometimes it's really important to reevaluate what you're doing. If you're running late, to not race and say to your child, we're going to be a few minutes late because we're so flustered. I'm going to drive a little extra carefully, and I'm going to drive a little more slowly so that we can be safe. And that you share this, because those are the lessons. What you said also, when you say, we walk in the classroom, I think what's really helpful is when your kid's at the top of the slide, and you say, don't fall. No. Oh my God, I'm going to fall. No. When you go up on the top of the slide, I want you to look carefully and make sure that you're safe. Okay? And then if you have to, you can say, I get a little nervous when you're at the top of the slide. Take ownership. But one of the things that we want to do is to help our children become independent, to be able to help them make good choices. So when I'm at the top of the slide, if there's another child there, I'm not going to push that child. I am going to make sure that everybody's holding on. And we learn that by showing them, by telling them, by praising them for doing it. And these are all kindness acts. And our tone of voice is so important. Our body language is so important. This is what kids pay attention to, and this is what they model. Did anyone else have a question as we move forward?
I had a question.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. Sorry, I was a little late today. So how do you help children connect kindness with inclusiveness? Like, especially, let's say in a 4-year-old, 3-year-old classroom, preschool, when they're, you're trying to encourage children to include one another, play with each other. But yet many children kind of are, more concrete, black and white, where you're my friend, and if you play with this other person, you're not my friend, and they can't really see the gray. So how do you kind of, encourage children to connect being kind to also being inclusive in a preschool classroom?
Thank you for that question. I think one of the ways is to immediately go for the commonality. Oh, you like that doll too. Or you like to cook in the play kitchen. What are you making? Oh, what did you have for dinner? Can you show us how you make that? And go for the area of commonality and say, and sometimes we have to be a bit more involved, because as you say, a child on his or her own may not know that that's really what the root is of inclusivity. And then we also say, I once saw somebody and I didn't think we had anything in common. And you know what? That person is somebody that I call if I need advice. Or that person is somebody who, in other words, you bring it to yourself and say, sometimes it's hard to really connect with somebody who you don't think you know, but how do we get to know someone? A stranger is just a friend waiting to happen, right? And I think that we in our own language, in our own design, we also, when we bring our kids to school, say, oh, I don't know that I know you. What is your name? Where do you live? Do you have a pet? Right? Do you, whatever. Do you like the color pink? And you start somewhere. And yes, it sounds forced, but if you're a child, that's kind of like what you connect with, right? Oh, you like Legos too? Or look at that truck. Did you see that truck? Oh my God, look how big those wheels are. Whatever it is, and you find one common path. And once you find a common path, then you will find others. But you first have to get in the door and get on that path. Does that help you?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so
And
much.
if I might extend it, I would also say we have to also do this to kids who are alone and kids who may be a little shy and kids who may be bullying. And I think we talk with our children about, gee, what do you think's going on with them? One of the things that I think is really important is to talk about how it would feel to be unhappy, or why do you think a kid might not feel like they want to join in? Or, maybe somebody wasn't nice to them and they don't want to try again. So we want to be sure to do that. What does it mean to eat by yourself? Well, you may want to, but maybe you don't think anybody wants to eat with you. So let's offer to share our sandwich. To proactively do that and let them see that you're doing it as well. When you're in the park and you have your playground, oh, there's somebody playing and they don't have somebody to play with. Do you like the swings? Would you like to play? What's your name? And I find this is also helpful if you have a pet and you're going out and dogs can bring people together. And, the toys that kids have in the playground can bring kids together. But I also think it's important to talk to kids about what it feels like to be that kid. You can do this with literature. There's a wonderful, wonderful psychologist whose name is Raymond Marr, who works at York University in Toronto. And he studies the power of literature with very young children, preschoolers and very young children, and how important it is to talk about the children's feelings when you're reading a book with them. There was an article written about it a couple of years ago, the Goldilocks effect. And, really what are kids learning from reading and having their parents read to them? And what they're learning, if the parents are willing to do this, is empathy. Because you're talking about a character and what would you do in that situation? Why do you think that girl did that? And do you think that that boy would have done that if his parents were watching or if he was alone? And then how did that make them feel, right? How would you feel if you were that kid? And you can do this with books, you can do this with movies, you can do this. Certainly on television, you can stop and say, what do you think you're going to do? Do you think she's scared? In other words, bring the emotions and articulate what those emotions are like. And what do you think that other person felt? Children who are really guided with empathy generally are more charitable as they get older. They are certainly more charitable in their teen years, and they are more civically involved. And it starts very, very young. So when we're reading a story to a kid, we're not just reading the words, we're reading and discussing the emotions. And we're also asking the kid, what do you think happens next? So that they can anticipate, what if this happens? And you're noticing my affect so that kids can really get into it. They are invested. When people are invested in one another and the other person's emotional well-being, there is empathy, and that is the basis for compassion. We have to see the humanity in the other person, so that, to come back to your original question, if you see the humanity in that other child, then there's no way that you would exclude them, because you realize that they would be lonely. And what's it feel like to be lonely? So let's ask them to join us. And sometimes we have to guide in that way. Another question?
Yeah, hi, it's Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
I'm gonna ask probably what the disciplinarian parent would ask, which is, how do you discipline through kindness? Because I think the one struggle I'm sure that most of us face is, and obviously more so now, right? The kids are around us all the time. We're stuck at home working all the time. Frustrations easily happen, right? So how do we kind of diffuse that while still kind of instilling, kind of course corrective actions, right? So not yelling, but, kind of asking them why they did something, why they throw their toy, or, Max is 2, so obviously temper tantrums are possible. He's a really good kid most of the time, but of course, just trying to figure out how to balance, again, corrective actions versus, thinking about being kind.
I love the question. And I don't know a family, even without COVID, but particularly with COVID, that is not asking that same question. And my answer is, first, be kind to yourself. It's the only answer. So try to breathe, try to excuse yourself, unless the kid is throwing the truck through the window, and just calm yourself and say, whoa, wait a minute. And teach this to your children as well, so that they can have a moment of controlling themselves or calming themselves. And we can do it together. In the book, at the end of the book, I have ways to do this with your child and ways to do it by yourself. And that was before COVID. And so I think you can say, whoa, what's going on? Now, sometimes the kid's not able to articulate it, but you say, you're really having a hard time. Immediately go to how they're feeling or what you think you're observing. Wow, that's a surprise. In other words, try to describe, and that will help you to keep it together. You can also say, depending on the age of your child, I don't have any words, right? I can't even say anything right now. I need you to sit down. I need us both to sit down. And one of the things that's really important when you're really upset, if your child is not in danger, please do not touch your child. Because most of us feel that we are going to, kind of bring our child over somewhere. But if we're really in a heated moment, our grip is often a little too strong and our pull is often a little too hard. And unless your child is in grave danger, use your words. We always say this to the kids, use your words, but do not touch your child, and particularly a small child. And it's just not a good thing to do. When you are both sitting down, and it may be that you have to sit down exactly where your kid is on the floor. And one of the things that my grandmother used to do was sing. I don't know how she did it. I swear I don't know how she did it. But when she was taking care of all the kids, which she often did, she would sing. And she'd sing a song. And she would immediately get everybody singing. Now, again, I don't know how she did it, but it was amazing. The idea is to try and distract if we can, to hum, to sing, and to say, or you can say, I think you're really upset. I think you're really mad. I know what it feels like to be so upset. I know you want to go outside and we can't. I know you're frustrated that you can't play with something else. It's so hard. And at that moment, the recognition, and it may take a few minutes, what do you think we can do with that anger? What do you think we can do with that sadness? What do you think we can do with that frustration? What can we do with that disappointment? Can we draw? Can we shake? Shaking is very good. Moving is very good. Punching is very good, as long as no person is there. And these are the kinds of physical ways that kids need to get this out. You can put on some music and start moving and dancing and stuff like that. It changes the energy. And it also changes you. But you have to have a presence in order to do that. And that presence comes from breathing and calming yourself and knowing, number one, that you'll have another opportunity. And so if you blow it this time, it's okay. And that you can practice this. And you can say to your kid, I don't want to yell at you. I am really, really having a hard time with what you just did. So I need some time. That's the most respectful thing you can say to yourself and to your child. And if you can't get the words out, time out. And then you come back and you say, we have to talk about this. Can you tell me what you think happened? Because I think I know what I think happened, but I want to hear it from you if your kid has done it. And then you can also do a little play therapy and get that kid with 2 dolls or whatever to play it out. The reason I'm giving you these options, one of them hopefully will work, but they don't all work at the same time. So in your hip pocket, you have to have a few options. But the essence, Michelle, and I appreciate that you know that, is how can I do it with kindness? How can I address where my child is emotionally with kindness? And how can I totally correct with kindness? Does that help?
Yep.
Good. Any other question before we go on?
Yeah, Rosie and I are blessed with 4 children, and our oldest is expecting, God willing, end of July. And it's very interesting, sort of in this liminal space now of, you know, parent with the older children going into this grandchildren phase, and it makes you go through almost the cinematic memories that you have in place. And you know, very influential in my life was my mother of blessed memory, and you know, she used to do things that I kind of remember, and it seems strange to me, and I never really had the conversations. But you know, one of the things is we grew up in California. We went a lot to the beach at Half Moon Bay, and my mom used to bring like 30 buckets and 30 shovels for the sand. And I was, you know, I just never really thought about it. But then, you know, what happened? You had all these kids come gravitate over, playing together. The house just always, you know, had children in place, and it wasn't anything that was being articulated, but it was being modeling. I do think that you know, kids are so bright in terms of picking up for what we're doing. One of the most powerful things we do is, you know, the rabbis talk about this, is tshuva, repentance. Recognize when we do something wrong, regret it, reconcile. And, you know, the power of, you know, being willing to say to our child, you know, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have lost my temper. I regret that. I'm going to try harder. I think kids gain a lot from that, because we do make mistakes. Prayer. I mean, a lot of us struggle, you know, what do I believe about God? And I kind of like, you know, the Hebrew National Hot Dog definition, right? A higher authority. If there's something above us that commands us to be better each and every day. And, you know, prayer isn't so much as, you know, asking God to do something, as it's taking ideas and self-examining it in our hearts and minds and kind of pushing us to it. And you know, we can't be afraid to access those rituals. So, you know, the simple thing of, you know, the kids learn in nursery school, the blessing over the bread, motzi lechem min haaretz. You know, theologically, that prayer is a very strange prayer, because you're saying, the power that is you, God, ruler of our world, who brings forth bread from the land. Well, you know, no loaf of bread pops out of the land. And the rabbis talk about that, you know, what you're really saying with that prayer is you're recognizing it's God who gives us the opportunity, but it's a partnership that we have to work with God to create that bread. Our kids don't understand money. Till they earn money, they don't understand it. I didn't understand money till I got a newspaper route when I was 12 years old. And my father taught me how to keep the books and collect the money. And I was, you know, very excited. He was going to take me to the Northern California Savings and Loan account to get my first account. I was gathering my money. I was very excited. And he goes, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? We're going to go to the bank." He said, "Well, yeah, but you're taking all your money." And I said, "Yeah, because it's all the money I earned." He's like, "Well, you have to put aside 10% for tzedakah, for charity." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And you know, because my whole life, when I went to Hebrew school, my mom or dad gave me some coins. I dropped in the pushka, never thought about it. But now it's my money, right? And it was a very different response. I'm not very proud of the response. It was very, 10%. That's a lot of money. But that was the first time money meant something to me. And then to do the mitzvah, have the action. Our kids, when they're little, they don't understand that, but they do understand concrete things like food. So, imagine the power of when we're thanking God for the bounty received. Okay, but before we say this prayer, right, we're going to get our, can that we're going to put in the bag, because we're going to bring that to neighbor this week so someone else can eat, right? Kids get that. Or you go outside and you say to your child, boy, it's really cold out. Can you imagine what it would be not to have a jacket? There are people who don't have jackets. Maybe we need to go through our closet and see if the jacket. Kids get things very concrete. And in Jewish law, the distinction between tzedakah and chesed, kindness, or we say gemilut hasadim, acts of love and kindness. Tzedakah is very important. Helping others, we're supposed to tithe ourselves. But gemilut hasadim, acts of love and kindness, is actually considered the thing that's above tzedakah, because it's the attitude of the act that I'm doing. And an act of love and kindness can be with words, it can be with tithing of time, it can be actions. Someone was talking about, I think Dale, you mentioned it, when we're on, the biggest test to our religiosity isn't when we're, in a class like this, we're thinking about things, it's in the moment, right? So if I'm in a rush and I'm driving and someone cuts us off and our kids are in the car, so all our instincts are to be frustrated, right? But what would happen if we were able to control ourselves and say, boy, that person's really in a hurry, I hope everything's okay, right? Or I'm stuck in, an accident and, I'm very frustrated, and there's an ambulance coming, and instead of frustration, boy, I hope the person's okay, right? Kids have those moments where they begin to process things very differently. And that's also, again, the purpose of prayer, is to self-examine. So I think that, the act of love and kindness it's not accidental. It's just like everything else. Take our professional skills, we calendar what's our workflow, what are we supposed to do? And I think we think, parenting is supposed to be, natural. It's not. It's sometimes being very concrete, very methodical, planning out what it is we want to do, what it is we want to achieve, evaluating it, right? Taking our measurements, if you will, and then building for the next step forward. And again, that's the purpose of prayer in this form of self-examination. And I'll just end with this, and I'll turn it back to Dale, because I know we're going to have her conclude, and we have one final thing we want to be able to teach on. But the rabbis say that when you're engaged in an act of love and kindness, and the sun is setting, you're supposed to say your evening prayers, right? You have a time responsibility. You are forbidden to break off from the act of love and kindness to go pray. Even if it wouldn't affect the act, meaning you could go back to it, you're still forbidden to do it, because the whole purpose of the prayer is the training of ourselves to do that act of love and kindness. And that becomes part of the purpose, again, of how do we use ritual to train ourselves into that, religious Menschlichkeit behavior. So Dale, I'm going to let you wrap it up. We're going to take any last
Thank
questions.
you,
We have
Rabbi.
our final remarks, I know, because we want to honor people's time today.
Yes, indeed. And I think that what you just said is so profound. If we really think about looking through that lens of kindness, and it becomes a part of us, it's already in us. So we just, again, want to exercise it and help our children understand that we want to do, as we have to look and see, where is there an opportunity for kindness? Where in the house? If your child brings, puts water in for the hamster, say, oh, you're so thoughtful, I actually forgot about the hamster. Or I'm so glad that hamster's so lucky to have you as his daddy. Whatever it is, you articulate it. And you also articulate what you learn from them and what you learn from other people. I just got off the phone with Aunt Sue, and she told me something, and I'm so glad she did, because she's always been a role model of me for kindness. And I would ask you all to think of who were your role models of kindness, or who are your role models of kindness. What did you learn from them? Who were your role models that you don't want to be like, and because of their unkindness? And over time, you may forgive them. Over time, you may understand them. But what is it that you want to do so that you're not like that? And these are the things that you can also share with children. When you see something and you say, gee, that lady wasn't really very kind to the person who was serving her. Yeah, she must be having a hard time, but we don't talk to people like that. In our family, we have to pay attention, and we really need to be respectful to people, particularly people who are serving us because they're helping us. And we communicate respectfully, but you can't talk about communicating respectfully if you don't communicate respectfully. And again, showing compassion. And I love, Rabbi, when you were talking, when you really are talking about the sun, the sun rising and the sun setting, it's a wonderful reminder. What am I grateful for today? What am I really, what do I want to teach my kid about? Or what did I learn from my kid? And even at dinner, if you're sitting together, say, I learned this from you today. I learned a little more patience when I was waiting for you and I wasn't frustrated, and I decided that I would listen to a part of a book that I like, or I noticed something. I just stopped and I looked at how beautiful the landscape is. And I sit here every day and I didn't really notice, but today I noticed. I think when we share the goodness in our life with our children, which doesn't mean we don't complain, but we share the goodness and we share and notice their goodness, it's really important. And it's hard to say, oh, my kid is acting so badly today. My kid's such a bad kid. No, they're having a hard time. Many years ago, a parent said to me, oh, my kid is giving me such a hard time. And I said, your kid is having a hard time. And I think that what our kids give us is opportunities to try and figure out how we can be there for ourselves healthfully and for them healthfully. And it takes a lifetime. I mentioned before, I have 6 grandchildren, and they are from 8 years old to 16. I'm constantly learning from them and from my friends' children and grandchildren, because we're all evolving. We're all becoming. And this year taught us things that perhaps we didn't want to learn about ourselves, about our family, but we've learned them. And as we go forward, how can we really include them in our own patchwork of kindness? So perhaps on that note, I will say that I wish you all opportunities that you will take, and the ones that you can't take at the moment, think about them and say, what might I have done? What would I like to do? What goals do I have? When I take a vacation, should we ever take a vacation again? What can we do? Where can we go? And maybe we'll bring books. We'll go to a place where people need something. Maybe we'll volunteer as a family. Kids who see their parents volunteering with them have incredible respect for their parents because they see them through a different lens. They see them in different opportunities. And sharing volunteer experiences with your kids is really quite remarkable. So I think I'll end there. And maybe, Rabbi, we have one more question, and then
happy to take questions. For those who might want to stay on, happy to stay on. We're entering our season of spring, season of hope, season of renewal. It's not an accident that Passover and Easter fall right here in this space. Picking up on the theme, our spring project, our spring cleaning. How are we doing our, spiritual cleaning? What are we doing with the kids that are concrete? How is it that we're able to say to our kids, this is our house. How do we make our house beautiful? And they'll say, oh, we pretty curtains, and we do these different things. Okay, but how else do we make it beautiful? And then, well, what if we put the tzedakah box on your bureau by your bed? So, you can drop in a couple coins, or a bag where we're going to put the canned food. Passover Seder, has the opening of it. All who are hungry, all who are needy, come and eat. I mean, what a powerful thing. We're beginning the Seder. Well, there's different types of hunger. There's different types of need. What can we do? And have something very specific. And the Passover Seder becomes that opportunity, especially when kids are little. Let's do a project that's related to that at the Seder, right? We can do something that's there. At the end of the Seder, there's a custom of opening the door and asking Elijah to come in. Well, what a powerful thing. Who do we open our door to? Who do we want, to do? And how do we have that in place? And again, it starts with us. I'll say, we as parents and grandparents and whatever the case may be, how do we push ourselves a little bit out of our comfort zone, right? We have our friends, we have our circle. Roseanne and our natural circles are from 4 generations of 4 children in 4 classes in nursery school. That is our circle of friends still to this day, right? It's the most powerful place. And then it's hard. How do you, go up to someone who you don't know, and just, oh, hi, I want to introduce myself. I see you have your child. You ask some questions. You do that, and you know, and kind of push it out. I read an article that said, you know, people can't have more than 150 real friends. And I said to myself, wow, that'd be terrific, right? To really get 150, but it's kind of, you know, really pushing ourselves to be able to do that. So I encourage us again to sort of take advantage of that opportunity. It's you know, I love this, you know, circle back to what Dale said before, you know, it absolutely starts with self-compassion, because we can get down on ourselves for kind of failing. The only trick of the trade I will teach you, and you know, I just really fundamentally believe this, is put in your schedule what you want to do, including, by the way, put in your schedule when you're going to shut off your phone, right? And you're going to put it aside. Don't do the multitasking piece of it, because then you've already diminished the effectiveness. And tell your son or daughter, I'm shutting off the phone for the next hour while I'm with you, because before you know it, they're going to have phones in front of themselves as well. And you're going to wish you taught them how to put the phone aside. So these become the things. So Dale, thank you so much for your time and generosity and love and spirit. I'm going to stay on with Dale. If anyone wants to stay on, we're happy to. If anyone would ever want to have follow-up discussions, we're happy to do that as well. So Shavua Tov, have a great week. And if people need to slip off, we'll certainly let them do so.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope you
Anyone
enjoy the
have any
book.
last things they wanted to ask or question about? No? Okay. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dale. Thank you,
Bye
Rabbi.
bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, everybody. Rabbi, it's so wonderful to be with you, to teach with you. It's just lovely. Thank you for asking.
That hour
to be
went
involved.
very quickly, didn't it?
It did, didn't it?
It really
And we read each other's minds, because as I finished, I said, oh,